The evening had all the ingredients of a classic royal afterparty. Glimmering chandeliers, crystal wine glasses clinking softly, whispers under velvet drapes, and the scent of aged red wine dancing with high-end perfume. But what should have been just another posh wind down turned into a turning point for the monarchy, all because of one offhand joke. 16 careless words from Laura Lopes that would tear open wounds the royals thought they'd buried years ago. Laura, Camilla's daughter, wasn't exactly a stranger to attention. At 47, she still had the youthful glow people envied, with icy blue eyes and that signature golden blonde hair she inherited from her mother. She hung around artists, influencers, and the nouveau aristocrats who wore rebellion like a badge. That night at Sandringham, Laura had a bit too much wine and a lot too much confidence. She cracked a joke about Princess Anne, harmless in her head, devastating once it left her lips. "I think she should be displayed with her old military uniforms in a museum next to antique relics," Laura laughed, followed by a sarcastic smirk and a sip of Bordeaux. You could practically hear the needle scratch off the record. The smiles froze. Someone coughed, and from the corner of the room, a phone was recording that someone was Eleanor Shaw, a retired American aristocrat turned royal fanatic with a soft spot for Anne. She wasn't some random guest. This woman had been following Princess Anne's legacy since the 70s. When she heard Laura mock the very symbol of royal duty, her fingers tightened around her phone. She didn't plan on uploading it, not at first. But as she replayed the clip later that night, a part of her knew the world needed to see what she just witnessed. The video made its way online 2 days later. First, a post on X, then Instagram. And like wildfire in a dry forest, it took off. The backlash was instant. Who does Laura Lopes think she is? Princess Anne is royalty. Laura is a +1. Camilla's daughter riding royal privilege? Not on our watch. Laura's name started trending, but not for the right reasons. Camilla got the call before breakfast. Laura, crying over the phone, begged for help. "Mom, it was just a joke. I didn't mean it." But the damage was done. The fire had started, and it was licking at the edges of their carefully crafted royal image. What Laura didn't expect, what nobody expected, was Anne's silence. The princess didn't go to the press. She didn't post cryptic statements, she simply watched, observed, and then acted. In her quiet estate at Gatcombe Park, Anne replayed the clip again and again, face lit only by the glow of her computer screen. Not because she was hurt, she had thicker skin than that, but because she recognized something deeper in Laura's tone. It wasn't just a joke, it was entitlement. It was the mocking of tradition, and worse, it was coming from the same branch of the family that had already pushed boundaries too far. Anne had let things slide before. Camilla's rise, Laura's pretentious charity galas, even the whispers about Diana's jewelry making unexpected appearances. But this was too much. She made a call. One single call. Start from 2020. Finances, events, jewelry, everything connected to Camilla and Laura. "I want proof." That was all her investigator needed to hear. Because for Anne, this wasn't about revenge. It was about restoring balance, about protecting what little was left of Diana's legacy. And as the first reports started to land on her desk, Anne realized she had all the ammunition she needed. And someone was about to learn what happens when you laugh at a storm that's been building quietly for decades. The report arrived in a sealed envelope, hand-delivered by a retired intelligence officer Anne had trusted for years. She didn't even open it right away. Instead, she poured herself a cold cup of tea and stared out the window, her fingers drumming against the wooden armrest like a ticking clock. When she finally flipped open the file, her jaw tightened. There it was in plain ink. Camilla had signed off on a royal jewelry request for her daughter in September 2021, specifically Princess Diana's sapphire teardrop earring. Laura had borrowed them for an art auction in Rome under the pretense of charity. No approval from the Royal Jewelry Advisory Board, no official permission, just Camilla's signature. Anne slammed the file shut, eyes blazing. Diana's earrings weren't just accessories. They were a symbol of grace, of heartbreak, of a woman who had fought to retain dignity in a world that had chewed her up. Letting Laura parade around in them for art clout, it was grotesque. She didn't waste a second. She forwarded the documents to William with a short message. "Nephew, I think you need to know this. Your mother's legacy is being exploited." The response came quickly, but it didn't need words. William's fury echoed through the marble halls of Kensington Palace like a storm. He had spent his adult life defending Diana's name, reshaping her image from tabloid headline to humanitarian icon. To see Laura Lopes flaunting that sacred memory for an art gala, it was betrayal on every level, he typed with shaking fingers. I know all about my mother's sapphire earrings. What right do you think you have to exploit that legacy? This is an unforgivable insult. Don't think I'll stay silent. Laura received the message in her upscale London apartment just as she was prepping for another gallery event. Her hands turned ice cold the moment she read it. Her throat closed up. Her world spun. Camilla answered her daughter's call in the middle of a reception at Buckingham Palace. She excused herself, stepping into a quiet side room lined with velvet drapes and dusty portraits. "Mom," Laura whispered, her voice cracking. "William knows. He sent me a message. He's furious." Camilla's breath caught in her throat. Her first instinct wasn't to scold her daughter, but to blame Anne. "I'll fix this," she said tightly. "I'll speak to her." She didn't wait for permission. She drove straight to Gatham Park, boots echoing on the stone floors as she marched into Anne's private study without knocking. "You went to William," she hissed. "You want to destroy my daughter. Haven't you taken enough from me already?" Anne stood slowly, posture as solid as stone. "I didn't take anything," she said flatly. "You gave her the earrings. You gave her the rope." She didn't know what they meant, Camilla shouted. She was trying to represent the family. "Don't insult me," Anne snapped. "She wore Diana's legacy like a costume, and you let her." Camilla's face went pale. "You're obsessed with Diana," she muttered, still living in her shadow. Anne stepped forward, eyes locked. "I'm not living in her shadow. I'm protecting what she left behind." "You crossed a line, Camilla. Now your daughter will pay the price for your arrogance." The words hung in the air like thunder. Camilla didn't speak again. She turned and left, tears in her eyes, heels clicking against cold stone. Anne didn't watch her go. She simply sat back down, opened a new file, and began preparing the case for the Royal Jewelry Board. The battle wasn't over, it was just getting tactical. The Royal Jewelry Advisory Board gathered inside Windsor Castle under the soft golden glow of antique chandeliers, their faces tight with tension. Princess Anne stood at the head of the long mahogany table, a thick folder in hand, her expression unreadable. Beside her sat the evidence, dated forms, Camilla's signature, the event photographs, and a signed receipt detailing the unauthorized use of Diana's sapphire teardrop earrings. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Every word she spoke hit with surgical precision. Camilla overstepped her authority. These earrings were not hers to lend. This is not simply a breach of protocol. It is a desecration of memory. And that memory belongs to someone who cannot speak for herself anymore. No one dared interrupt. Anne then invoked a rarely used clause buried deep in Queen Elizabeth II's private will, a clause giving Anne full guardianship over all jewelry tied to Princess Diana's legacy. It was a quiet power the late Queen had trusted only to Anne, knowing the weight of it required someone who wouldn't bend. With William's backing and clear evidence on the table, the board had no choice but to act. The earrings were retrieved immediately and placed in royal vaults under a new law classification. A full audit of Diana's pieces followed. Laura Lopes was formally removed from all Diana-linked charities, including the Diana Legacy Trust, a position she had previously used to elevate her public persona. The trust's announcement was brief but final. "We no longer recognize Laura Lopes as an honorary member, effective immediately." The fallout was swift. Tabloids erupted. "Legacy War rocks Windsor," screamed one headline. Others simply crowned Anne as the last royal with any real integrity. Camilla retreated from public view, no more ribbon cuttings, no international tours. She remained locked away inside Buckingham, shuffling between the library and her private quarters, haunted by every decision that had brought them here. In her apartment, Laura faded from the art world. The exhibition invitations stopped, sponsorships pulled out. She withdrew from all upcoming events and vanished from social media, leaving behind only silence and unanswered apologies. Camilla tried one last time. An official letter to Anne requesting reconsideration, asking her to restore Laura's position quietly for the sake of family unity. Anne didn't reply, but she did speak publicly weeks later at the Women for Britain Gala. Dressed in deep navy, hair pinned back with military precision, she stood before a silent crowd and delivered a speech that sent ripples through the monarchy. Legacy is not a costume. It cannot be worn for convenience. It is earned, carried, and when necessary, defended. The applause shook the hall. Anne never mentioned names, but she didn't need to. Every person in the room and everyone watching the clip online knew exactly what she meant. Back at Kensington Palace, William wrote her a note by hand, just one line. "Thank you, Aunt. Mom would have been proud," and read it alone in her study. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply placed it inside a drawer filled with her most private letters, the only ones that mattered. Meanwhile, Camilla stared out the palace window at the gray London sky, the weight of her actions settling on her like cold rain. Her daughter's future in the aristocracy had crumbled. Her own influence dimmed. She whispered into the quiet, "I only wanted her to feel like she belonged." But that ambition had cost them everything. In the end, it wasn't the press or the palace that delivered the harshest verdict. It was the unspoken truth that echoed through every room in Windsor. Diana's legacy had a guardian, and her name was Anne.